Japanese yen under pressure as geopolitical risks support the US dollar.
Canadian dollar. Trade conflict keeps downside risks alive against US dollar. ING. Can Wash stop the dollar selling at Jackson Hole?
All right, 3-minute warning.
Pound yen price forecast. Bulls recover lost ground as intervention effect wears off.
Don't forget your coffee or your tea. Grab your Monster. That's us. It's time to go.
Ripple price forecast, XRP bulls eye another breakout with 1.70 in sight.
Cool. That's the Squawk Box running in the background. Hey, YouTubers, I can tell you're more than 2 minutes delayed. That's the lag on YouTube. 2 minutes. Unacceptable. But anyways, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Forex.Today, the YouTube community of more than 21, almost 22,000 foreign exchange traders. We gather here today to conduct technical and fundamental analysis with the overriding goal of planning our trades in advance, because trading is risky, not appropriate for everyone. Your past performance, good or bad, is not necessarily indicative of future results. Please stay small, stay humble, focus on the long term, never risk money you cannot afford to lose. All right, so what is raison d'etre? Well, we are traders and investors, and we are here to go through our daily routine of getting warmed up for the New York trading session. And having routine and regiment is a good thing. This means you have a framework for your decision-making process. And we are here to do this together. Also, my name is Wayne, and I am your chief macroeconomist. I work on your trading desk with you. Yeah. Isn't that cool? That's neat. You're like, hey, man, I have a Harvard-trained economist working on my trading desk. Yeah. I work for you. You're the boss. I am a humble servant to your successful Forex trading business. It's pretty cool. S&P 500 hanging in there. I know the futures are rocking and rolling. We got NVIDIA tomorrow. We're also got a little bit of a rally. It is the third week of August. So 10 years ago, this was the week of the year in which I was very aggressive. That over time has changed to more of third week of September, but very often what I have seen and what I have taught for these many years is this scenario of, if the third week rally of August doesn't work, then try again the third week of September. But whatever, I think there's a little bit of NVIDIA guessing. There's a little bit of Warsh not raising interest rates guessing. There's also this idea that with our new front with the war with Iran, the financial front, not right, not nomads land in the trenches of the Somme, not that kind of front. Back to the front. The new war on money, which is interesting. So many people are saying, oh, well, if the United States is moving away from bombs and moving towards finance to wage their war, then the bombing part is over. We're done with that. And there's a peace dividend. Okay? Peace dividend. Hey, watch your mic, guys. When you log in, make sure your mic's off. All right. All right. What else? Bitcoin hit 80K. Oh, for sure. 80K. We were at in the 60s, low 60s, and now we're gunning for 80. So again, sort of is that a peace dividend? Maybe. Is it anti-dollar? Yes. So we're debasing, we're monetizing. That's not good. So there's a lot of individual pieces moving this year. And so one of the things going on is the Treasury is buying our own treasuries to manipulate market yields. They're intervening in the bond market to try to push down the 20 and the 30-year yields. Very similar to central bank intervention. All right. So the chain of command here is if you go back in history, you have George Soros and you have Jim Rogers working at the Millennium Fund. By the way, I have 6 degrees of separation to both of those gentlemen. Cool. So then they hired a kid named Druckenmiller, and he takes over. And then Druckenmiller hires a kid named Warsh. No, Besant. Sorry, Scott Besant. Interesting connection, right? And they made a boatload of money betting against this type of government intervention. It should be in the opinion of Besant and Druckenmiller and Rogers and George Soros that what Besant is actually doing in the long run will not work. But maybe they only need it for the short run. Maybe this is bailing out Japan. There might be a reason. So a lot of people might say, hey, well, he's trying to push down yields. Yes, that might and even probably be true. But why would he do it if he didn't think it worked? Right? So what I was saying yesterday or the day before is, what if Japan called Warsh and said, hey, man, we're in trouble. We need some cash. So we need you to buy some of our treasuries back to prevent a Japanese government default. Wouldn't that be interesting? Well, he couldn't tell you that, could he? But what I'm trying to figure out, and this is why I share this about his business background and his experience, since he was a young man trading on the desk at the Millennium Fund with George Soros, Druckenberg, and Jim Rogers, the three, the guys known for breaking the Bank of England, right? He knows what I just shared with you. He knows buying the 20 and 30-year treasuries to push down yields is just not a strategy that will work in the long run. Okay. So what's he up to? I don't know. So what if it was the worst case scenario? He's preventing a Japanese government default. Yeah. What happened here? Oh, I clicked on scenario. So gold up, sure. Same thing. The same reason why Bitcoin is up. Because if the government is debasing its currency, it should be negatively it should be punished. Should be punished for that. Okay, this is what I was talking about earlier. The hot war may be over, and we're now in a cold war with Iran. What I told you or shared with you as far as my opinion of this maybe a week or two ago, all of this could be yours. No, that the war, what's going on now in sort of the end of the hot war, is that we are setting up the negotiation with China. This is all about China. Okay, even Venezuela was about China. Okay, Cuba's next. Cuba's about China. So we have we have a summit coming up, and all of this is set up for the summit. So we are now going to embargo and block money coming out of places like Hong Kong. Really? It's coming out of Hong Kong? So again, this is just as much to do with China than it is with Iran. Cool. So if we move into a Cold War now, because we're at a steady state going into geopolitical negotiations, cool. Does this stuff work? Well, think about this. China went from communist socialist to communist capitalist without the United States firing one bullet. Did we do it? Oh, yes. You can thank the United States of America from converting communist socialist, the worst scenario you could possibly have. The worst is communist socialist. Communist capitalist? Okay, so now what part of the communism don't you like? Well, there's one person in charge and they make all the decisions. And I'm like, you know what? There's actually a lot of advantages to that. Now, there's a lot of disadvantages, but a lot of stuff can get done. Unfortunately, even the bad stuff, right? But it's very, very efficient. Democratic countries like to sit around and talk a lot, right, France? Right? Sit around and talk a lot and do nothing. Meanwhile, I've been to China. I've been to the old China, where entire cities were just gone in the matter of like a year or two. Right? I always like to give the example. California has been talking about building a bullet train from Northern California to Southern California. Because now with traffic, a 6-hour drive back in the 90s is now an 8-hour drive. But what if there was just a bullet train? Great. They've been talking about that since 1973. And they still haven't even put one spike into the ground. Talk, right? So it's kind of it's interesting to have a capitalist pig dog, but under a communist regime, which just says, hey, build a train, put a train between San Francisco and LA, and I don't give a crap who says they like it or dislike it. Just do it. Okay. And it's hard to compete with that, especially if there's a logic behind it. So China said, hey, so I went to like Chengdu, for example, and they rebuilt Chengdu, which is kind of like Chicago. It's built around commodities, historically anyways. And now they're like, hey, this city is going to build laptops. The city of millions of people. And we're going to redesign the whole city to be incredibly efficient, from the universities to the airports, to the train ports, to the factories, to where the factory workers live, to how they get their water and electricity, and the commute system and everything, and how it's all put together. Everything is designed with strategy on paper. You go to the Silicon Valley and you're like, dude, this place should be the richest place on earth, and it's a shambles, the Silicon Valley, compared to like Chengdu, China, but all built on US dollars. Before the capitalism came along, China was like, they were like cavemen. What happened to our split screen we had yesterday? We put Jim up there. I'll take that down, Jim. Yeah. So anyways, Socialism is absolutely the worst. Sorry, New York City. Yeah, you couldn't find a dumber way to run an economy from an economist point of view. If you want to go back to the cave system and barter system, yeah, by all means. But hard to compete with, right? On the flip side, now we have our capitalist pig dogs in charge, and we're doing things like manipulating our central banks are manipulating the value of their currency. Our treasuries are manipulating the value of our bonds. And this is when capitalism is shaky. So we got to pay attention and we got to care. Yeah. So cooling off still, no freak out moment yet. Five-year break evens, not so good. That still says in the future, inflation's going to be high or higher or growing. And what you probably want to do is, I don't know if it's here or here. Does the forward do it? One of them, I mean, they're both forward projecting inflation expectations that we're pulling out of the market. I think this calculation is the 5-year break-even rate minus the Treasury inflation protected securities tips. So I think it's break-even minus tips, which would give you, like, let's say the inflation in 5 years will be 2.25. It's similar to a real rate, meaning inflation minus interest rates or something, or interest rates minus inflation. Cool thing is we're just tracking it, and either way, no good, not helpful right now. NASI was down. It's up now, though, isn't it? Yeah. So what I was saying is, could be hot wars over rally. Could be Nvidia's going to report tomorrow rally. It could be Warsh is going to confirm they're not going to raise interest rates in September rally, or it just might be third week of August rally, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. That's a lot. Well, it could be one or all. They're not mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. 210 spread. Okay, narrowed a little bit, but not much. It's actually been quite flat, which is a way to read the yield curve. 10-year rates are coming down, but they were so ridiculously high. So look at this number versus that number. So got another hot mic. This is hot mic day. Hey guys, when you log in, it says, do you want your mic on or off? Choose off. I don't know why they would even develop a system like that. Like, hey, do you want to come in with a hot mic? No, you don't. But just so you know, it does ask you. But I know very often we're just in auto mode, or you're just, Microsoft has trained you, like, you want to do something benign, like log into something and like, hey, 75 pages of legal documents. Next. Agree. Go. I don't even know how that's even legal to say, hey, on your phone, accept a 75-page legal document. You're like, dude, right? I once had an ophthalmologist give me a contract to sign, a liability, thing to sign while my eyes were dilated. I'm like, dude, if you screw up here, I'm going to sue you. And it doesn't matter that I signed this form. My eyes are dilated. I'm like, I couldn't read it. I misunderstood, right? Like, it's just so funny. What else going on? Nikkei hanging in there. Junk bonds did all right yesterday, but have been flat. Investment grade bonds kind of flat to nothing going on. Oil's still too high. Ooh, I'm going to ask him about this. That's not scored correctly. It might just be a front end reporting thing, and he's doing it in the back end. In fact, they're all, hang on. This is just, I think, reporting issues. Front end, I mean. Cool. So good, though, to be able to read the market at this degree. If you're wondering what this is the foundation for building an alert service to alert you to risk. And score flips and COT trend changes in COT, and interest rates changing. Massive changes in the risk radar. So imagine you just get emailed. Yeah. So we had a very basic version of this. This is the next level. So CPI coming out of Australia, and you got to be careful. 19 pip spike. That's in 13 hours. Okay. But it's still in beta because we care about CPI year over year. Yeah. Trimmed mean? No. Trimmed mean again? No. Okay. So Tokyo CPI? Yeah, maybe. Tokyo CPI X food? No. But Eden is reading and measuring and quantifying moves. And then this should probably be filtered out. Things like, if Canadian GDP is coming out, but it doesn't move the market, then you don't need to send somebody an email. All right. So it's getting quite smart. Critical versus important. So he's trying, he's learning, he's getting better. Critical. NFP. Revisions coming up in 3 days. Yeah, that's likely to be important. Yeah. So, anyways. But it's just there. Like, I don't know if you've been watching it or not. Should we care about consumer confidence at 10? Prices on housing? Yeah. It's not the prime directive, but we are worried that if housing prices are crashing because of high mortgage rates, that's going to be a problem. And if Besant already knows this is happening, that he's buying the 20 and the 30 year to push down mortgage rates because he sees a serious problem in the mortgage industry. Yeah, okay. Then we need to get onto that glue train soon, right? Yeah, he hasn't done the history. So we already cleaned this up. It's pretty good. We got a lot of speeches coming out. Remember, Warsh wants to get rid of a lot of this Fed talk. $0.9 year over year. The IFO's okay. Crypto just doing cray. So I was trying to get this to work for more crypto. And as you can see, it doesn't look right. Well, one of the reasons is there's just not enough data for all these other, we'll call them altcoins. Okay. So I said, well, then why don't you use like the correlation of these? And of course, they're all so highly correlated that they all have the same number. And that's not good. So I'll have to come up with a way to do this. But remember, the score on the bottom here is from the fundamental analysis. And then from that, I was trying to then use correlation data, but just not helpful. I just may not be able to put them on the scatter plot just because there's just, how can we have a long-term opinion on Polkadot? Long-term macroeconomic opinion on Polkadot, would it be radically different than Ethereum? Maybe. Radically different from Dogecoin? Probably not. I don't know. I don't know. Not macro. So maybe it's just not very good for that asset class. Yeah, but it's the issue is the macroeconomics. In the underlying economic system of or situation in this economy or in other economies, is there a larger need to buy polka dot than before, and specifically polka dot over Dogecoin, right? So you're like Doge versus polka dot based on macroeconomic analysis, and it just seems like, dude, you're buying crypto or you're not buying crypto. And now you as a trader might have a preference, and there might be a million different reasons why you prefer one over the other. It's just not macroeconomics. Right. Exactly. So maybe that's a challenge or a risk in trading crypto, right? That there there let's say 50 different ways to trade the same thing. Now, Ethereum and Bitcoin tend to stand out a little from the pack. They're a little different. And then there's everything else. Yeah. But as a crypto trader now, maybe you go through all the different charts, you go through all the prospecti, you look at all the use cases, or you just look at the value. And you're like, well, if all of this asset class outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum are generally going this way, and maybe we're entering a new regime in which Bitcoin's going to go back to 100,000, then maybe this crypto in which I can buy a million coins for $5, maybe it's got a moonshot scenario that might work for you. And in many cases, that's how crypto works. You're like, wow, I put in $500 and now it's worth 50,000, and now the use case is iffy. And so you moonshot somewhere else. Buy and hold, right? Buy and hold on for dear life. Yeah, I knew a mechanic that had, I think he had made I think it was more than $100,000 trading some crypto he knew nothing about. It might have been closer to 200,000. And trust me, this guy wasn't a sophisticated trader. He just threw some money down on some shit coin, and all of a sudden he had 200,000, and he thought he was a genius. And I'm like, bro, I'm super happy for you. Super ridiculously happy. Now you can actually afford the car that you work on, because he was a Porsche mechanic. But he drove a Hyundai to work. Loves Porsches. So I'm like, why don't you take the money, buy a used Porsche in good condition that you can maintain cheap, because you're a Porsche mechanic working at a Porsche place, right? You got all the tools and stuff. I'm like, and then stuff the other stuff, stuff the rest of the money, the other 100K, into your retirement account or into some other just long-term investing account. Like, take the money and run. And he's like, no, I'm a freaking genius. I'm going to be a millionaire soon. Yeah. Now he works as a mechanic for garbage trucks. Yeah. No, true story too. I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me. You got $200,000? Like, dude, take the money. Take the money. Take the money. Take the money. Wah, wah, wah. Yeah, Felipe. And I had this conversation in the early days with my son. And like every, he must have been 12 at the time, 13 maybe, I don't know. But he, addicted to YouTube like every other kid his age. And he's like, "Hey, some guy has Doge, was it Doge? It might have been Shiba Inu, but I think it was Doge." And he's like, "Yeah, he bought some Doge, and now, he's got all these YouTube videos about how rich and successful he is." I'm like, I'm like, cool. I mean, but it's still not worth anything. And right. And so we had this conversation like, there's the price, but then there's the value. I said two different things. So right then and there, I said to him, "So what do you think the next big one is?" Shiba Inu. I'm like, cool. And we're right there eating lunch at a hole in the wall place that we like to go. I just whip out the phone. "Shiba Inu, really?" I'm like, boom, I just bought 1 billion Shiba Inu for like $500, right? And I'm like, see, look. And I said, I think this is going to go to zero. I think there's absolutely no use case for this thing. But similar to the other things, right? So I'm like, let's just watch it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and I'm going to make $100 million. So we bought it right then and there. Yeah. Now my son is very smart with money. Oh my God. Okay, we had an okay day in general. Okay, just kind of, and it's okay today. Nazi, I believe, is up today. So it was down yesterday, and now we're up in here. Okay, it's fine. Not unusual for the third week of August. Go back to my YouTube videos from 15 years ago or 18 years ago. Try to find some around the middle of August, and you'll hear me talking about the third week of August. So it's nothing new. It's just developed into two launch pads, third week of August, third week of September. Sometimes third week of August works. Third week of September always works, except when it doesn't. What I like to say in the day trading group, 60% of the time, it works every time. So, but these are clearly in my brain two different things. And maybe because of the election this year in November, it's going to make or force many market participants, and in particular, what we care about is institutional, is that they need to get into the trade early and avoid volume and volatility and freak out and all this kind of stuff that may happen around the election. So they're like, you know what? At the end of the year, I want to be long the stock market, so I'm going to long the stock market at the end of summer, right? And they're like, I'm just going to write out September. So how do you do that, by the way? I discussed this a lot the last couple of sections. You buy the stock market and buy a put. You're like, I know September is going to be bad, but I have to be in. There are situations like this. Imagine you're a fund manager and you decide to move to 30% cash because you're worried that September is going to be a bloodbath. Well, your clients are worried about a bloodbath too. So you know what? They look at 30% cash and they're like, Jim calls me up and says, you know what? If you're going to be in that much cash, why don't you just give it to me and I'll make some decisions? I'm like, no. Cash is a position. You're like, dude, I'm not going to pay you to sit on my cash. There's just no freaking way. So you're like, you got to deploy the cash, but then keep some left over to put into a cash secured put, or in this case, you would use stock as a collateral. Okay. Or you most likely, in most situations, you have like, let's say 50 different stocks, all inside the S&P 500. And then you take some cash, buy a cash secured put on the S&P 500 and hedge all of them. Wait, I'm mixing up two things, aren't I? Sorry. You just use the cash to buy the put. Sorry, cash secured would be writing. Sorry. I got the wheel burned in my brain. All right. What do you see here? CAD week. At first, it looks like dollar strength, huh? Not really. Kiwi, Kiwi. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Okay, pound stronger than Kiwi, but Kiwi okay. Wait, Kiwi dollar down, but Kiwi yen up. That's where this gets so much easier. Swissy's still strong, but not crazy strong. Kiwi, yeah, fairly strong. Dollar fairly weak. Yen fairly weak. CAD. So this is another way of reading the same thing, isn't it? This just updates a lot faster. Notice I go to the swing trade because I like to filter out noise over the last 2 hours. And also, something that's been quiet during the London lunch doesn't mean it's going to be quiet in the next 2 hours at the New York Open, right? So I like to step back a little bit. And you would think Kiwi dollar up, Kiwi yen up, okay, Kiwi CAD up, right? Swissy dollar down, Swissy yen up, okay, CAD Swissy down. So it just kind of sets things up. We've gone from 28 to 32 on the crypto. I hope you've been listening. I went on and on and on about this, a half an hour yesterday in the afternoon or evening session. Don't miss it because you don't like it. If you're right, you got to do something. You need to recognize what's happening and do something. Energy, the big weak one. Cool. Yeah, traders trade always. I got that from a writing class. Writers write always. Yeah, even when they don't want to. I remember in 11th grade or 12th grade of high school, one of the English teachers forced us to keep a journal. And I'm like, this is dumb. I'm a teenager, right? Keep a journal. This wishy-washy dumb stuff, right? Let's play football. So keep a journal. And it was required. And then I complained, and the teacher said, well, it's part of your grade, so you have to do it. So every day I'd write journal entries about how dumb writing in a journal is. Oh, I was a handful. Yeah. Yeah. And I got in a different class, I got sent to the principal's office for writing a haiku. Dude, what do you have to write to get sent to the principal's office for a haiku? And it was a beautiful, perfectly written, structurally correct haiku. They got me sent to the principal's office for being a bad boy. Yeah, no. Clever and bored, probably, huh? Yeah. It was good too. The name of the poem was A Womb with a View. And it was a poem about uh, a fetus in a jar because it was up there in our biology class. And it was controversial for the school because they actually had this fetus in a jar. I don't know if it was a human fetus. It was something, I don't know, some sort of fetus in a jar. And the principal was really proud. The school was really proud. It was very controversial. It made them look edgy or cool or something. So I wrote a haiku called A Womb with a View. Yeah, I think it might have been a pig. I do remember sort of it was pinkish, right? So that's why I'm like, but it couldn't have been a human baby, right? You know, so yeah, you're probably right. A pig fetus, but anyways, I thought obviously it was clever, but I made them mad. So anyways, this is the short-term noise. I think once the markets are open, I do prefer the day trading side. Okay. And here I'll filter out the short-term noise while we wait for the fireworks. Right? So I live in the United States of America, and any one of my neighbors will tell you it's God's country. And one of the things that God allows you to do in America is fire off fireworks before the 4th of July fireworks. It's in the Constitution and it's in the Geneva Convention. It's that powerful. The fireworks before the fireworks. And oh my God, I'm not talking about little firecrackers. The largest, most dangerous explosions in the world. The thing is, it's still not the 4th of July fireworks. Right? And some of them are close to the size and scale. And so what you want to do is, know when the real show starts. And so if I'm in here and the markets aren't really open yet, I'm going to look at this and go, oh my God, the US dollar's ripper strong, but it's somewhere between 0.25 and 0.33. It's not that strong. Seems strong. The neighbor's firing off fireworks. Boom! And you're like, that was huge. Well, you should see the ones on the real show. Yeah. So, yeah. So I like to step back a little bit here and then move down here once the real show happens. What does the dollar do relative to everything else? We know in general the dollar has weakened. And see, so this captures over the last 7 days. We don't want to lose sight that over the last 7 days, we've gone from 101 to 98. So maybe it's 99 and a quarter now. Okay, but it still was 101. It still is weaker than it was recently. And I want to look for that. So I don't want to get sidetracked with this strength. What I want to see is if this goes from 0.3 to 0.2 to 0.1 to 0 to negative, and I want to see it falling. That's what I care about. And that's what I want to follow because that has been the trend. If the stock market rallies And the little birdies are whispering in my ear, NASDAQ's rallying today. Dollar should weaken. We have the Besant intervention that should weaken. We have oil coming down that should weaken. Okay. Which means gold and crypto should go up. Okay. Have metals gone up yet? No. Why? The dollar's strong. So if the dollar weakens, metals go up, crypto's already gone. So for metals, it might be a buy a dip scenario, huh? And look at silver. So we got 3 precious metals and an industrial metal. Might be a neat move here in platinum. Does anyone know the 4th and missing precious metal? There are 4 precious metals: gold, silver, platinum, not copper. All right. Does anyone have a palladium front tooth? Does anyone have a palladium watch? What do we do with palladium? No, diamond is not a metal. Deco says mine it, right? Catalytic? No. Is that platinum or palladium? Yeah. Use it and use it to drill stuff. Card. Yeah. So anyways, yeah. Have you guys ever considered specializing? Like, what if you traded only energy products, but the whole kit and caboodle, meaning not just WTI and Brent, not just different local, like European nat gas, US nat gas, but what about all this even smaller subsections of it, like electricity? There's a YouTube video, and I don't even know who does it or anything. I think I watched 1 or 2 episodes of something that some guy made. I can't remember, but it was one of these ones where he asks rich people what they do for a living, right? Guy pulls up to a private jet airport in like this crazy sports car. And the guy's like, "Hey man, what do you do for a living? If you don't mind, I'm a young man trying to make my way in the world." And he's like, "I don't know, but why don't you come with me in my jet? I'm going somewhere. And we can talk." The kid's like, "Yeah." So total setup, right? But anyways, so they get in the private jet and they ask the guy, "So, how did you make all this money?" And he's like, "Trading electricity." And it's a subcomponent of energy. So yeah, you can not on an MT5, but you can become an energies trader, and there are these sub markets where there's futures and there might even be options. Well, Osamu, why wouldn't they? Well, right now, I keep telling you that everything that's going on with Iran and Venezuela and even Cuba has to do with negotiating a new trade deal with China. Takes some time to do this. Even North Korea has come up recently. This is all about the upcoming negotiations with China. So what would China do in response to the pre-negotiation? We're not going to buy your crap, America. Okay. And if you paid attention to what Aiden was reading in the media, he told you yesterday or the day before that China has decided to have a strong yuan. Which means they don't want to buy the U.S. treasuries, right? So now, tit for tat, they're setting up for the negotiation. Isn't that a bluff? It's all a bluff. What are you talking about? Yeah, all it is like there's no good or bad. In war, it's not who is right, it's who's left. So imagine you got a general and his staff on this hill, and on the other hill there's a general and their staff, and they're just lining up the men here and here and here, and these three are going to attack from the front, and then you're going to move these around the flanks, and then send in the cavalry, and don't forget the skirmishers, right? The pikes, send in the pikers. This is just jostling for position. This is what the media gets lost in. He said this and she said that and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. They have the strongest card. I don't know about that. Okay. Chinese economy is not doing that incredibly well. Do you hear about the guy from that was running, what was it? Everclear, Evergarden, Evermarket? What was the big guy Chinese? Evergreen. They were one of the largest real estate developers in all of China, and they went bankrupt about, what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago? Sentenced him to prison for life. Now, this goes back to the discussion of, communism versus democracy. See, lots of people mix things up, like they'll say socialism, or they'll say communism, but they mean socialism, right? And all this kind of stuff. And our choices are democracy for the organization and management of society, and capitalism as our distribution of resources. So we go through a financial crisis. The economy loses trillions of dollars. And because banks were gambling with people's money and nobody went to jail. There were even situations where the SEC shut down banks for stealing hundreds of billions of dollars. And the SEC came in and said, you can't do that. So give us $3 billion and we'll let you off the hook. So they come in, the SEC comes in and just shakes down the drug dealer. The cop looking for bribes from the rich drug dealer. Didn't change anything, and no banker, right, went to jail. So you're like, and then we get in this situation of, well, they're too big to fail. Well, some people will say, you know what? No, they're not too big to fail. The CEO was a liar and a thief and a scumbag, and half of his team was in on it. So they need to go to jail. They need to lose their jobs, pay penalties, get kicked out of their mansions. Their Bentley should be sold at auction, and they should spend 8 years in jail. So anyways, but no, everyone got to live in their mansions, lose their job, and get a $20 million retirement package with $100 million in the bank. And they go to their 40,000 square foot house and go, oh my God, I lost my job. You're like, really? That's the big punishment? Yeah. So anyway, so then you go to the other side. What did China do? They're like, this scumbag almost collapsed our economy. You're going to jail forever. You're like, whoa. So interesting. I don't think I'm a communist. I'm definitely capitalist, but I kind of like that. Like maybe for life, I don't know about that, but there should be consequences. So for example, this idea of too big to fail. Wells Fargo. Let's save Wells Fargo. Why? They're liars. And they're bad bank managers. They're horrible risk managers. That son of a gun should fail. Yeah. That kind of thing, right? Oh, Silicon Valley Bank can fail, but not Wells Fargo? What is brutal capitalism? I don't know. I guess that brutal capitalism, I don't know the term, but so if you mixed, I mean, you could if communism is simply a central decision making, a central decision making process, one or 5 or 10 people make all the decisions, right? Let's say, because it could be run by a committee, it could be run by a person. And let's say that's communism. I don't think communists have to be bad. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I think absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? But I think, couldn't you have a benign or even a happy-go-lucky communist party where they decide what, everyone's going to be happy or something? I don't know. I don't know what that world looks like, because all of a sudden I'm like, well, let's get a socialism. Everybody's happy because everybody's broke. Well, okay, look, you're saying I don't see the ugly side of China. Okay, and it's at my fault because we're getting so off topic, but I'm not making a comment on China. And I have seen, I've been all over China, all over, up, down, east, west, north, south, flown on every Chinese airline there is, right? But what I'm saying is, I'm talking about communism doesn't have to be bad. It just has always been used in a bad way. Okay. But I think you could have the opposite, where they're like, we're gonna do something great together. And maybe that's what communists think. But the thing is, it's just simply a central command versus democracy, where everybody gets a voice. 8 million people to make a decision. I swear to you, I was at the University of Georgia recently, and I saw 7 men changing a light bulb. And I'm like, Dude, new world record. I witnessed it with my eyes. It was a street lamp, 7 guys. Right? But there's the central authority, one or some, versus this huge democracy. One or some is simply more efficient. Now, it could be brutal. Like somebody said, what is brutal capitalism? I don't know, but maybe that's it. Maybe that's a sign where one or some, a small group, a small committee says, okay, the guy from Everclear was bad. He made bad decisions. He hurt our economy. Many people lost money. He's going to jail for the rest of his life. He effed up big. He must pay big. That's brutal, but maybe deserved or some variation. But that value system and that decision-making process made that output. All right, right? Maybe it's harsh, maybe it's not, but they got there and they did it. In our democratic democracy version is lots of voices happened. And all I know is we went through a banking crisis, we went through a mortgage crisis, and there were people that knew it, knew what they were doing, and benefited greatly from it. And they got off basically scot-free, or at worst, a little slap on the wrist, but got to sleep in their Tempur-Pedic palace the next day. And I don't agree with that either, right? So you're like, oh, okay. But I want you to realize, okay, Emil, well, did communism do it or did something else do it? So again, I'm not pro-communist, dude. But I'm just saying you got to separate the political management system from the let's say the social organization. Socialism is 1,000 times worse than communism. So yeah, so 100 million, let's say I'll go with your point, Emil. 100 million killed by communism. Okay. That may or may not be true. Let's say it's true. If they're communist socialist, it would have been 1 billion because they would have just simply starved to death. Yeah, there's nothing I like about socialism. It's completely flawed. And by the way, it's not my opinion. I am an economist trained at a liberal school, right? But if you study socialism, it never works. It never has worked. It never even got close to working. Okay. But also, I want to, on the communist side, nothing in communism says, now, if there's a communist with a point of view writing a paper, he's going to have an opinion or she'll have opinion. But just in the idea that communism is a centralized command of government, none of it says the centralized command must destroy all the churches. Some a-hole did that. Nobody said this central command should murder all these people. A human did that, not the political structure. Right? Bad people made those decisions. Okay? That's all. So, hey, and by the way, I must say it again, I'm not a communist. When you argue it, make sure you separate the political system from the social infrastructure. But not everybody understands my point of view. I actually argued this at Harvard and got my ass whooped, but I still have my opinion. And I argued that there are no bad companies, there are just bad people. And I argued in a paper, I can't remember which one, but Enron said, look, there's about 10 people out of 30,000 that knew they were liars and thieves. Doesn't mean all 30,000 people in this company was bad. Companies are just an organization of people. So if 10 people are liars and thieves and are raping and pillaging, and the other 29,990 are good, regular people going to work every day, doing their job, clicking the buttons and earning enough money to put food on the table, doesn't mean they're creeps. They don't know. They don't go in and like, let's rape and pillage today. No, they're like, you know what? I got to get this report done or my boss is going to yell at me. And so Harvard hated this, by the way. And is that fair? No, Harvard didn't read my paper. One man read my paper and he had an opinion and he disagreed with me. I'm still right. Okay. So anyways, I don't know how we get on this. I guess I think it's an intellectual conversation and it's sensitive, which makes it awesome. Okay. We just haven't had a good communist. But you could. Okay. Now, if I was to bring in the Pope now in this conversation, I would be doomed. Okay. But let's say the Pope is a good person, chosen by God, chosen by a committee as well. And he runs an institution. He's the boss. Now, there's chairman of the board, God, but he's the boss, right? I'm pretty sure. The Pope is the boss of the Catholic Church. He has the ultimate decision. And it's the same organizational structure. One person makes decisions for everybody, and nobody could overrule him. I think that's generally true with how it's worked. Okay, but we're okay with it because he may or may not be a good person. Good. But obviously that social structure is not a country. Okay. So I guess you could start looking for good communists. Right? Get some good communists out there. Well, but it's not impossible. But our check and balance in the United States, it was a pretty good idea. It was new at the time. Yep. And if you read Adam Smith, who was Scottish, he wrote this book called The Wealth of Nations, and the United States literally used it to create their constitution. If you look it up, it was published like 6 months before 1776. And they're like, yeah, this is pretty good ideas, right? So there's a check and balance, which is good. The invisible hand, if you will. And it's great. So we have multiple branches of government. Some have powers overseeing each other. Then you have a fourth branch called the media that keep the government in check in general. I wrote a paper called the dog with fleas, what was it? The watchdog with fleas, because of the corruptness and misuse, I don't know, the media. The media went from a branch of government that just simply published the truth and kept the government in check. Now they'll whore themselves out to sell ads. So now you have extreme left and extreme right, and you have no idea what's the truth. The Watchdog with Fleas. Yeah. It was a good paper. Okay. But the idea, right, Maida, is that there is a check and balance. It's not very good right now and probably needs some tweaking. Right? Some will argue that the Supreme Court is very political. Probably always was, but right. Some would argue Congress and the Senate are completely ineffective. Some will argue that to win the White House, you have to be extreme right or extreme left. And it's only getting more extreme, in particular, I'd say on the liberal side, on the Democrat side, they're becoming more and more and more radical left, which is interesting. Like Clinton wouldn't win. I mean, Mr. Clinton wouldn't even be nominated to run for president of the United States for the Democrats. And so now we went from, right, there was progressive Democrats, and then now there's communist Democrats, and there's insurgent Democrats. And you're like, whoa. So we got this wildness going on, right? And the media is ineffective. And also capitalism is flawed. But we know the flaws. The thing is, do we have the guts to carry it out? Okay. Do we have the guts to carry it out? What do I mean by that? If we don't have the guts, we say things like inflation's high, raise interest rates. Just raise them. Okay, you will put people out of work. And inflation will fall because they've lost their jobs. Okay, what if we did nothing? And gas prices kept going up? Because remember, interest rates and gasoline prices are not related. Not in this case. At some point, a capitalist would say, oh my God, gasoline prices are high. I got to sell my Ford F-150 and get a Toyota Ridgeliner? I don't know. No, that's a Honda, right? Honda Ridge something. Anyways, I'm laughing because there's a cartoon like, that's not a real truck. You're not a real man if you drive a Honda Ridgeliner. There's this guy on YouTube that goes through fake job interview questions. He's like, so you want to work here on the construction line? Huh? What kind of truck do you drive? Honda Ridgeliner. No, you're fired. But anyways, what a capitalist, a pure capitalist now would say, you don't need the Fed. And I'm not making this argument, by the way. I think we do need the Fed. But a pure capitalist would say you don't need the Fed to make these decisions. Now, somewhere closer to Wayne would say you need a Fed, but the Fed isn't supposed to change its monetary policy so often that you're betting on the monetary policy change and not the real economic situation. So if gasoline prices are too high, stop driving as much or buy a more efficient car. Sell your truck, get a smaller truck. Sell your truck, get a car. Sell your car, get a motorcycle. Sell your motorcycle, get an electric bicycle. But adapt And the government doesn't have to come through and say, we're going to make all these adjustments for you so you don't have to do anything. A capitalist would say, change your behavior. Houses are too high. You should have saved more money. What'll happen if prices get too high? No one will buy houses. So when people have to sell their house, there's no buyers. What are you going to do? Lower your price. There's still no buyers. Lower your price. Still no buyers. Lower your price. Oh, you got an offer. Take it. Equilibrium. Capitalism is designed to solve for equilibrium. But the flaws are some people will make more money than other people. But the cool thing about capitalism is it doesn't care who you pray to, who you make love to, who you marry or don't marry. The color of your skin is irrelevant. Okay. In capitalism, you want hustlers, people to come to work and do a better job than anybody else. And entrepreneurialism is another form of that, because you can be an entrepreneur, but you can be an intrapreneur, where that employee of a company comes in and says, hey, boss, this is interesting. I looked at all the capital, right? And I looked at all the labor, and I found a way to combine them in a unique way to get higher output. Same inputs, more output. Lower marginal cost, inflation comes down, and that person gets a promotion and a bonus. That's how capitalism works, right? Pure capitalism would not have discrimination. That person would get a reward. Now, the other extreme size, that's pure capitalism. In pure socialism, when I was in Cuba, which is the exact opposite, let's say, of America, there's no or little, I didn't see any discrimination. Didn't matter what color of your skin, everybody was cool. Everyone was cool with each other. Everyone was the same. Dirt broke. But there wasn't a class. There were people with money and people with no money. And that was that. But that was also eye-opening. So when you actually look at the United States and Canada and Great Britain and France and Germany and so on and so forth, there are different versions of democracy, which is a government, right? And capitalism, which is a social way to manage resources. They're all similar, but they're all different. And so none of those are pure capitalist. But there are different consequences. Okay, but as you move to more and more capitalist, it promotes personal excellence. The more you contribute, the more you are likely to gain, which is perfectly fair. Everyone has access to opportunity, right? And then someone comes in, you're like, well, why does this guy make so much money and that person doesn't? Well, that person, the richest person in the world, came out of nowhere, right? Elon was a young hustler, came out of South Africa, and he shows up in the Silicon Valley. And he's like, I'm going to invent something called PayPal, where you can email money to somebody's phone. You're like, you can't email money. You have to be a bank. And how the hell would you email money? Elon, you're an idiot. And then he does that, and then he's like, I'm going to build a car and you can drive with batteries and it's going to be the fastest car in the world. And they're like, dude, that's stupid. An electric car, nobody's going to drive an electric car. How are you going to charge it? And there's no charging stations, and we want big trucks. And like, dude, that's stupid. Oh, and I'm going to build a rocket company, and I'm going to compete with NASA. Dude, you couldn't be more dumb. NASA owns the entire industry. It's a government monopoly. You can't build a rocket. Oh, I'm going to build a rocket, and then the boosters are going to come back to Earth and land themselves at a podium so I can reuse them and make it cheap. Dude, that is so dumb. You can't do that. Oh, and by the way, that electric car works. I'm going to make it drive itself. You can't make a car drive itself. Dude, okay. Whether you like him or not, he's rich. What I don't get is when people get jealous and they're like, he's too rich. Well, why don't you at least build a rocket company? He could have just focused on changing the entire auto industry. Why didn't you just change the rocket industry? You could have just done that. Or why didn't you invent like, hey, email me some money? You should have done that. You'd be rich by now, right? Yeah. So anyways, but capitalism says that's how we're going to allocate, right? And it doesn't have to be so grandiose, but think about just little simple things. If you have a company, even if it's 100 people, but you have 100 people that are all kicking ass. That's all they do. They show up to work and they kick ass. That company is going to be profitable. The secret to business is simple. Produce more value than you charge. You're going to be successful. So if 100 people showed up all day and they were amazing, it's going to be a very successful company. And then you share the wealth. And now everyone is super happy. Yeah. So like so one of the problems is, I'm reading the comment here about the $100,000 car. Yeah, well, that is part of our problem right now. A car costs $100,000. That's not even a nice car anymore. Right? It's not a bad car, but a mediocre car is $50K. Dude, what the hell? So if somebody could make a very quality car for $30,000, they're going to be successful because there's a demand for that. Now, to make a quality car is expensive. To make it more affordable per car, you drive down the per unit cost, the marginal cost. How do you lower the marginal cost? Well, you build it with less capital, less labor, and or make a lot of them. So every time you double production, the marginal cost, the cost per unit drops by 30%. Okay. Yeah. So if your car costs $100,000 to make, but you make twice as many cars, it's now 70. Make twice as many cars, you're at 35. Your $100,000 car is now 35,000, but you had to double it and double it again. Or you put it together with less parts. So maybe instead of a 2-door, or instead of a 4-door, it's a 2-door. Or you use less labor. Now you might be thinking, well, then you just get a bunch of robots. No. So again, let me use Tesla. They've been inventing a new process along with some of their service providers. They had this idea where they had a machine and you can press a part. And it's like, I don't know, 500,000 pounds. You made a fender. Then Elon's like, well, what if it was 1 million? Can we make a bigger part? What if it's 5 million? What if it's 500 million pounds? What could you do with this machine? So what happens is, and they're going to release this, I think, in the next couple of years, but they're literally working on this, where you take molten aluminum, inject it through tiny little holes under extreme amounts of pressure into a mold, which is not an easy thing to do. And you have to keep it molten, okay? And then you have to cool it instantly, which is, okay, all of this is nearly impossible. But they're building this thing. You know what the output is when they open up the mold? The entire frame to a car. Why is this important? You can do it one chunk, boom, boom. The second thing is, remember the assembly line with robots going welding all kinds of things? No robots needed. No welding needed. You can build the entire chassis in 3 seconds. One part. You want soft. You want some flexibility in there. You don't want iron. But and of course they're aluminum alloy. There's other stuff like you don't want too soft, you don't want too flexible, but you don't want too stiff, whatever. I don't build cars. I'm a venture capitalist, so I look at these things. And yeah, can you imagine making a car in, let's say, 3 minutes instead of putting it down an assembly line and having dozens of robots weld hundreds of parts together? One part, 3 minutes, the car is done. Start putting the interior, start putting the drivetrain. Cool. So what's the end point now? The marginal, the marginal cost per car, the price per car falls exponentially. And it's likely the quality goes up. So you get a better car at a cheaper price. And because Elon did it, he's going to get filthy, stinking rich. And anybody else that owns that stock would get filthy, stinking rich. And hopefully the employees that are working all get filthy, stinking rich. Because that's how capitalism works. Work at Tesla. Come up with ideas like that. So I didn't say that. I'm using this as an example. You don't even know if I made this up or not. But the idea is that we can analyze this. Meanwhile, while I've been babbling on, the US dollar went from 0.33 to 0.2. 1/10 of 1% change in the value of the dollar. Should you be freaking out? No. CAD is now 0.1. Should you be freaking out? No, the stock market just opened. Okay. So we went very esoteric today, but it's okay. It's all right. Okay. Oil still negative. There might be a dip in the gold. You might want to look at that. Okay. Oops. Accidentally clicked that. I want to remind you, you should already know what you want to do and that nothing radically has likely changed. I did say I think NASDAQ's going to go up today. Even though it was down yesterday, it's up today. I described that hours ago. So far, it's up almost 0.1%. Shut the back door. Okay. We got a little positive projection there. So Aiden is saying, hey, price is above the 55 EMA, bearish structure compromised. Stand aside. So it's looking at a couple of things and it's easily misunderstood. But one of the things I've asked them to notice is when price drops below the 55. That can't be an uptrend. It's not necessarily a downtrend because the 21 is still above the 55, but it's really not a good scenario. So he's not saying here, sell it. He's not saying here, buy it. He's saying step aside, stand aside, stand down, soldier. You can't handle the truth. Dude, not bad. It's not bad analysis of reading this chart. 21's above the 55. It's projected to go up. Stand aside. Cool. So I'll see you at 4 o'clock for those that have leveled up and have access to our afternoon plan tomorrow trading